You reap what you sow, a proverb which means that future consequences are shaped by your present actions. 5 words which are never out of date. People are always reaping and people are always sowing, sometimes for the best and sometimes for the worst. And today, I'm going to talk about Activision Blizzard, a company that deservedly falls into the latter camp. They reaped and they sowed, and they got back exactly what they bargained for. This because quite a few years ago they shifted focus away from their longtime core audience and began instead trying to appeal themselves towards the toxic wing of progressivism. At least they tried giving the impression they were catering towards them. It's more that it's just been in their financial interests to hide behind such a facade, one that holds a high degree of hollowness. For let's be real, throwing in LGBT lore that can be easily cut for foreign markets, or suspending Hearthstone players who vocally stand by Hong Kong, certainly doesn't scream honest values. Which, to circle back for a moment, my expression of toxic progressivism is not an insult towards progressivism as a whole. I myself hold quite a few leftist beliefs. I'm a centrist for a reason, so I don't inherently hate those ideals, nor does this video exist to shit on them. I just hate the ever-growing group on the fringe who take everything to the extreme. And that's who Blizzard has been reeling in as of late, and rightfully they got bit in the ass for it. Many of you understandably take glee in witnessing the downfall of Blizzard. I most certainly can't judge you for it, as being quite frank, given all the legitimate stories of workplace harassment that have been brought to light the past couple years, Blizzard deserves far worse than what I'll be discussing today. Although admittedly those instances of abuse don't quite fit into this current topic, at least not in a way where I'll be discussing them at length. And that's why before getting to the thick of things, I do want to acknowledge them. Those stories shouldn't be swept under the rug, and I do believe a strong argument could be made that Activision Blizzard's shift in focus is partially a PR stunt, to appear as if they're a new and improved company. So keep that in the back of your mind. With all that out of the way, and getting back on track, given the toxicity of their newer demographic, Blizzard has faced resistance at every turn, and that's before taking into consideration the abuse scandals. The hyper-woke simply won't let others come out on top, even while being catered to, and Blizzard is faced with a no-win situation. Consider Overwatch. It is, without a doubt, one of the most diverse games within the modern, Western AAA market. Its characters originate from all around the globe, be it Egypt, Haiti, China, Brazil, Nepal, Nigeria, and India, just to name a few. It's a global melting pot that is represented by the various outfits, body types, accents, and skin colors of the cast. Throw in the fact that roughly half of them are women, and it has the gender diversity box ticked as well, which is not at all a bad thing. I dislike the core gameplay loop and community of Overwatch, so I don't play it, but I can acknowledge that its character design is on point. They're vibrant and memorable, and that's before getting into the porn scene which has evolved from the series. Who knew? My with a penis is pretty hot. But no, really, think of just how diverse the cast is. There's even an autistic character, and off the top of your head, how many games can you name that has a lead who falls on the spectrum? Not counting Sonic, of course, who's so very clearly retarded. You'd think such rich diversity and representation would obtain Blizzard goodwill from the audience it so desperately wants to profit from. But as with most things these days, it doesn't matter. At least not where that crowd is concerned. And Overwatch has constantly come under attack for not being diverse enough. The game that ticks tons of identity boxes has been deemed not inclusive enough, and not just by random loser dipshits online, but known loser dipshits such as those within gaming media. Its crime? It doesn't have a bona fide black female character. Just ignore that it has other women and men of color, including a dude from Haiti. They just aren't up to snuff because they either don't have ovaries or aren't dark enough. This has been a moderately sized controversy for a few years now. When the game added Ashe to its roster, a white cowgirl with lore tying her to other characters, most notably the other Cowboy McCree or Cole Cassidy or whatever the fuck they call him now, the media was so aghast that Blizzard would add another filthy cracker to its fictional world that they lost their collective shit. I'm going to gloss through this, so pause and read the screen if you want to see what they said, as I'll highlight a bunch of examples there. But the short and narrow is that Blizzard was letting black women down by not having a black female within the game. Now remember, Overwatch is already incredibly diverse, and it does have female characters of color who originate from India, Egypt, and Mexico, to name a few. There's also a black-coded robot whose creator within lore is black, and the robot even speaks with a female black African accent. The media has you covered on this though, because according to Fanbyte, she doesn't count on behalf of being a robot. Go figure, there is always a rationalization for how something isn't good enough. As for the other women within Overwatch, they serve as representation to people of other countries, including multiple African and Asian nations. One of them, Farah, is a mix of Native American and Egyptian. Naturally though, when a character skin was released which depicted her with native garb, it was written off as cultural appropriation. As for the characters who are Caucasian in appearance, they aren't just whiteys. I shouldn't have to say this, but the world isn't black and white. And on top of that, only 4 characters within the game originate from America, one of whom is black, by the way. And it's legitimately belittling to all the different cultures out there to treat everyone as if they're nothing more than their skin color. It's racism under the guise of progressivism, but these people can't see that, and so Overwatch gets nitpicked into oblivion. Interestingly, as I was researching this project, I came across tweets and articles from 2019 that argued how Apex Legends was more diverse than Overwatch, the rationality being that out of 8 characters at launch it had 2 black females, a non-binary, and a gay, therefore making it more inclusive. But is it? Overwatch at the time had 29 characters, almost all of them originating from real-world countries, origins that are reflected in how they talk and act. How is that less diverse than 8 characters? This highlights how these types have a very narrow-minded and US-centric view of diversity and inclusivity. I guess just fuck Nepal, Brazil, Nigeria, India, Egypt, and all those other countries that rarely get depicted within Western AAA gaming. They don't matter because something isn't good enough until there's a black they, them. It is truly not an understatement to say that there is never any winning where this crowd is concerned. And now that Overwatch 2 does have a black human female character, it's likely they will latch onto a new identity to bludgeon Blizzard with. Why wouldn't they? Diversity is the new weapon for sociopaths to bully others with, which is why the revelation of new diversity software at Activision Blizzard makes a lot of sense. On Thursday, May 12th, Activision Blizzard published a blog post to its website which detailed a so-called diversity space tool. This is software designed by King, makers of Candy Crush, and the MIT Game Lab, and its purpose is to highlight lapses in diversity within game design. As the post would say, it is a method for guarding against unconscious bias and exclusion when it comes to the creation of characters. Quoted within the piece is Jacqueline Camadas, a globalization project manager for King, and as she put it, quote, "The intention is to inspire game teams not just at King, but throughout the Activision Blizzard King network, to think outside the box and challenge preconceived notions around how characters should look and act. As a result, hopefully we will create more characters that break the mold and better represent women, non-binaries, and other underrepresented minorities in the industry." End quote. Basically, the software is a measurement device which gauges how diverse various character traits are when compared to the AAA norm. It essentially tells dev teams where they're lacking in representation, and this is done via a rating scale that assigns points based on culture, race, age, cognitive ability, physical ability, body type, beauty standards, gender identity, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic background. Its creators stress that it can delineate between token characters and true representation, which I call shenanigans on. In this regard, a GDC talk from 2017 is incredibly telling on how the makers view those who aren't, air quotes, normal. In one example, Lucio is cited, and because he's a DJ out of Brazil, he's, quote, a little bit out of the norm, end quote, with a dot placed not far from the center on the culture side. But then because he's black-skinned, his ethnicity rating is almost as far out as it goes. Now I ask you, what other game allows you to play as a DJ from Brazil? Can you even name that many Brazilian video game characters? how is his cultural depiction way less rare than just being black? And as I'll play a clip in a second, you'll see his ethnicity rating is purely because he's black. On top of that, because he's fit, young, non-disabled male, and straight, all his other markers are placed in the center. And the speaker describes him as, quote, not standing out much from the norm in any other ways, end quote. Are you fucking serious? His cultural and visual style is very uncommon, but they treat him as just a normal token black guy. The whole rating scale is bunk. It offers no nuance. Not all men are the same, but the mere act of being straight and male is an instant dot in the center. All diversity means to them is the most bare bones basic bitch view of it. This is most apparent in how ethnicity just boils down to skin color, but open a dictionary and you'll instantly realize that it's more than that. Just how he acts as a male would be different than an American male based on him being Brazilian and the American being an American, because different cultures raise their men in different ways. I cannot stress just how narrow-minded the software is. To cite one more example, while discussing Torbjorn, the presenter says he is a, quote, Swedish weapon designer. That's not super common, but it doesn't stand out from a cultural point of view, so I'll put him close to the norm. And he's white, so nothing on ethnicity, end quote. Really? His Swedish culture plays no role. It's just pure black and white. Although hilariously, because he's short, disabled, and old, he's seen as more diverse than Lucio. Go figure.
Ethnicity, he's black, so I'll put this quite far out. It's not that common. And it's not the scale from white to black. But Caucasian people are most common, and Asians are more common than, let's say, Indians.
To repeat myself from a minute ago, the software's creators stress that it can delineate between token characters and true representation. But no, it cannot. It is not true representation if an algorithm is making the call on what new boxes should be ticked. I would argue that it is pure tokenism. It is removing a layer of creative intent. It's an algorithmic decree that dictates if something is too white or too male or too this or too that. It's software which exists purely to increase a video game's capitalistic appeal, pull in more masses by dangling their cultures, genders, and skin color in front of them, just with no real thought or meaning other than a pseudo-progressive call for diversity. It's the most paper-thin form of representation, made all the worse because the company is patting themselves on the back for having a digital program that allows them to market how inclusive they are. If that doesn't sum up modern corporate wokeness, I don't know what does, especially with the company constantly under the microscope due to workplace abuse. It's like when Raytheon prided itself out, never mind they're an arms manufacturer whose weapons are often implicit in the deaths of innocent bystanders. But anyways, according to the blog post, the software has already been beta tested throughout Activision Blizzard, most notably on Call of Duty Vanguard and Overwatch 2. As Elena Cole, a diversity, equity, and inclusivity manager at Sledgehammer Games, was quoted as saying in regards to the development of Vanguard, because yes, an inclusivity manager is a real thing, quote, "We used the diversity space tool to figure out what more diversity looks like across all of our characters in both campaign, multiplayer, and live sessions. And now we're going to use that data going forward into the next games that we're working on." End quote. A funny statement in hindsight, as Vanguard had weak sales. The company blames its World War II setting, which probably did play some part, but so too did its obvious and ham-fisted attempts at being more diverse. Consumers can tell when something is disingenuous, and they smelled it there. The diversity was just lazy marketing tokenism, and it was handled so poorly within game that even Kotaku of all places called it out. So yeah, Good luck going forward, Sledgehammer, and you too, Blizzard and Activision, because the blog post ends with the declaration that the company plans to release the tool internally this summer and heading into Q3, with the ultimate goal of making the tool available to the industry as a whole. Needless to say, the widespread reaction to the Blizz blog was not pleasant, and the very next day an editor's note was added and some changes were implemented. Vital here is its claim that the software isn't being used in active game development. Never mind, it explicitly stated that it was, especially as Overwatch 2 is still very much being worked on. Conveniently, the entire section about its use in Vanguard was deleted, but thanks to Internet Archives, the original can still be read. I'll link it in my pinned comment view down below. There's quite a lot that could be said about their backpedaling, but I don't want to dedicate time to it since we're all probably thinking the same thing anyways. It's cowardice. You know it, I know it, let's move on. Instead Instead, I want to address the situation from another angle, one I think less people are considering. Although before I move forward, let me stress that the following is in no way a defense of Activision Blizzard. I say that because a bad faith interpretation of what I'm about to say is that I'm coming to their aid, and I'm just not. Activision Blizzard sucks, and I take sick pleasure in watching them being eaten by the very people they're trying so obviously hard to cater to. It's just that I also believe the diversity token software was inevitable, a necessary evil brought on by trying to please a demographic that will never, ever be pleased. As stated previously, Blizzard is in a no-win situation where its audience is concerned. Obviously, the devs never should have shifted focus to them in the first place. They're simply the worst of the worst. But the fact is that Blizz did shift its attention, and because of that, tokenism software makes sense. Where else do they have left to go? No matter what they do, it's seen as failure, so fuck it, let an algorithm dish out the modern form of an arcade token. If it dictates a gay, add a gay. If it needs a fatty, toss one into the pile, and so on and so forth. Because what else is there left to try? Here is a game which is an incredibly diverse experience that represents tons of different countries and cultures, and it still isn't enough. And not just for its toxic fandom, but for the media as well. Many of the biggest gaming websites in the world have lashed out at Overwatch for not having a black female character, and then when they did eventually add one to the sequel, it was attacked for being too late. I cannot stress this enough. It is impossible to please the toxic progressives. There is always something to nitpick and tear down. For instance, the game came under fire for cultural appropriation because of a hairstyle. This happened when they released a skin called MMA, and bloggers went nuts over it. Never mind it's common for female MMA fighters to put their hair into cornrows, or that no culture owns a fucking hairstyle. This further ties into what I said earlier about how their view of diversity is painfully US and leftist-centric, because Maya's from China, and there's Chinese MMA fighters who use that hairstyle. Are they not worthy of inclusion because they're not African American? It's also worth noting that these types would hate true diversity. I keep saying that Overwatch is diverse, but truthfully, it's only diverse in a safe and hollow sort of way. Allow me to elaborate. While criticizing the revelation of the diversity software, websites such as Fanbyte and The Gamer argue that the company should just hire more diverse developers. But it needs to be known that their idea of diversity only extends to skin color, sexuality, and ethnicity. They do not mean diversity of the mind. I have covered this more than enough on my channel, but gaming media is incredibly ideologically one-sided. If you are openly conservative, you will not obtain a career at IGN, GameSpot, Kotaku, Polygon, Fanbyte, The Gamer, and countless other mainstream websites. Even having minor differences in opinion is enough to get the gates slammed in your face. I still remember when Rock Paper Shotgun fired someone because he expressed support for transgender people and the bravery they exhibit, while also stating that shutting down debate is authoritarian and that the public should be allowed to discuss whether trans women hold an advantage over biological women in sport. Then there's the developers I've covered at length before who have been run out of the industry for no real reason, the only crime being they didn't toe a specific line. So with all that in mind, do you truly believe the media wants actual diversity? Because that would entail including people who hold a variety of beliefs, and a lot of countries within this world are overwhelmingly conservative and or religious, and to properly represent them would be to include their majority viewpoint. That's why this is also pointless. Diversity means nothing if the exhibited traits are only skin or clothing deep. It needs to represent the thoughts and ideas that various cultures instill with it. Otherwise, it is just tokenism. Or better yet, it's progressive whitewashing. Safe diversity dictated by those living in the bubbles of their coastal US cities. That's the diversity Overwatch contains, yet it's also not good enough. It's still too human, too fallible. So I go back to the notion that tokenism software is the next logical step. Let the pseudo-diversity become even more cold cold and meaningless, boil people down to nothing more than their skin, clothing, and sexuality. Maybe then the complainers will stop complaining. Or maybe not. Probably not. They'll always need something to bitch about. This is proven by the absurd things they get relentlessly pissy over. Like, come on, Blizzard has faced backlash because one of its heroes is barefoot. It's meant to sell an asylum look because the character was institutionalized after going crazy when his black hole research went wrong. And this was attacked for belittling mental health. On top of that, there was the butt pose controversy near launch, and just tons of other bullshit. Even the younger appearance and body types of its female cast is enough to draw ire. There is just no winning, yet that won't stop companies from trying, and as a result, we now have software that mathematically susses diversity out. Yay for progress! Sarcasm aside, let's not kid ourselves. Blizzard doesn't actually care about representation. It's often used as PR during times of rough water. Break glass on emergency diversity in times of crisis. They revealed Soldier 76 was gay when facing controversy over a fake female abuse scandal within Overwatch. Less than a year later, the first black female hero was announced in the middle of the Blitzchung Hong Kong controversy. Long before that, Tracer was revealed as a lesbian during a loot box controversy, and there have been other instances of Activision Blizzard throwing out stuff like that for other games while sitting in boiling water. It's become a tried and true tactic to achieve positive PR. And while I will concede that things like Soldier 76 being gay would have been planned long before the controversy it was used to stifle given the video it occurs in wasn't made overnight, there's an inescapable feeling that some of this stuff is held on to until it can be used to calm down tense public relations. Something the media latches right onto with fluff pieces and praise, which is fitting because similarly to Blizzard, they too don't care about representation. Not true representation, at least. And that's why the token diversity machine is perfect for them. It's as hollow a gesture as the rest of the lot. Their view of diversity is no less empty than Blizzard's. It's black and white and nothing more. Take something Nathan Grayson wrote for Kotaku as it pertains to the lack of black Overwatch females in 2019. Quote, "It's something else to run a game for 3.5 years, add numerous heroes to it, and fail to represent a sizable segment of the populace who have asked to be included countless times, only to be sent to the back of the line. One character among a roster 31 and counting is not pandering. That's the absolute bare minimum of representation." End quote. Think that over. The absolute bare minimum of representation in a game that represents tons of other cultures, some we barely see in other games. If that doesn't sum up a black and white viewpoint of the world, then I don't know what else does. So to the bloggers out there, enjoy the tokenism software your ilk bred into being. It's made specifically for you. You reaped and you sowed. Thanks for watching.
Suddenly, the world I used to know